The story of an old storyteller. Yes, I'm old. And I am weary. However, I wasn't always like this. Believe it or not, at some time, in the not-too-distant past, I was just like you. I too was bright-eyed and bursting with enthusiasm. I too was eager for the unfolding of things to come. I too had a thirst for more. Oh, so much more. If only I'd known then what I know now. Oh yes, if only. These thoughts, these feelings, these words speak volumes and herald memories of lost opportunities and of wasted moments and of squandered prospects. Here, now, in this gentle and peaceful place, I offer you nothing more than thoughts and words and pleas, delivered to you in the form of a pretext and in the manner of a petition. A petition to heed well what is about to envelop you, here, today, in this place. You see, I'm going to unleash upon you some very powerful insights by the mechanism of storytelling. I'm going to paint some pictures in your minds. I'm going to transport you, in time and in place, to somewhere and somewhen else, and, if I do my work correctly, and as surely as I can, you will, for a short time, leave this place and be somewhere you have never been before. Call this the power of magic, if you will. Call it whatever you like. A rose, by any other name, would smell just the same. And so, we begin. Let the magic unfold. In an English town, about 100 years or so ago, amid rolling cloud-speckled blue skies, accompanied by a gentle chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves, there sat, tucked away in a quiet, lower corner of a hillside, a sleepy old cemetery. That hillside was known as Hady Hill. And the sleepy old cemetery, that's this sleepy old cemetery, was known then, as it still is today, as Spittal Cemetery. And Spittal Cemetery was so called after the even older St. Leonard's Leper Hospital, which is thought to be close by, at the bottom of our Hady Hill here. I recount all this anew, for those amongst you who are, as yet, still unfamiliar with our subject matter. The cemetery. This cemetery, with its winding paths and old tombstones, was a haven for those who sought to reflect on the past and connect with the memories of those who had gone before. And this cemetery had a caretaker. And its caretaker was a man of quiet disposition and somewhat quieter wisdom. With a head of silver-grey hair and eyes that sparkled with the light of 1,000 stories, he had, over the years, become a beloved figure in the local community. Now it is said, and we have no reason to disbelieve, that he had lived many lives, through the pages of many books, and had walked many worlds with the characters he encountered in those books. His gentle demeanor and extensively read knowledge made him the perfect mentor for the eager minds of young, aspiring writers and would-be storytellers. Minds just like yours, all wishing to make their own mark upon the world. And, for those astute enough to notice, it was plain that our caretaker's hands, because of a lifetime of hard physical work, were worn and gnarled, and well beyond the holding of a pen any more. So his deliverances and offerings were now only spoken. His tales only told as his memories still allowed. And so it was, one warm autumn evening, that our caretaker began to share his wisdom. And his wisdom was the art of storytelling. And so, as it always was, with a group of eager listeners who gathered in this quiet, serene setting of our cemetery, he began to unfold his magical wares. With a mix of anticipation and curiosity, they settled around the caretaker in a semicircle, their notebooks and pens at the ready. The caretaker then began to feed his convocation, not with a how-to, a lecture, but with a story. He knew, only too well, that the best way to teach storytelling was through a story itself. Once upon a time, the caretaker began, his voice drifted forth soft and resonant. Once upon a time, there was a village nestled between rolling hills and lush forests. In this village lived a very tired old man, known far and wide for his wisdom and storytelling prowess. This old man was an old friend of mine, and, much like myself, the passing years had etched weary lines into his face. But this had no effect upon his stories, as they were woven deep into the fabric of his being. This old man understood that storytelling was not merely about recounting events, but about painting vivid pictures in the minds of his listeners. He knew that a well-told story could transport people to other worlds, help them to feel emotions deeply, and leave lasting impressions in both their minds and their hearts. One day, a group of young villagers, eager to learn the art of storytelling, gathered around the tired old man, much like you all have gathered here today. "Tell us, old man," one of them asked, "how do you make your stories come alive?" The old man smiled, his eyes twinkling with the light of 1,000 fables. "To bring a story to life," he said, "you must first understand the power of the human mind. You see, our minds are like gardens. They are fertile places, ready to be seeded with images and emotions. And words are the seeds. And it is through careful planting that these seeds grow into vivid, living entities." He paused, letting his words sink into the minds of his listeners and begin their work. "Imagine," he continued, "the sun dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Feel the gentle breeze ruffling your hair, feel, see, and hear waves lapping at your feet, and smell the faint scent of blooming jasmine mingling with the briny aroma of a balmy seashore. Think on this. When you use descriptive language, you give your audience, your listeners, the tools necessary to build these scenes in their minds. These are the constructions of the id, the instincts, the psyche, the subconscious. And they all have a generative force simply awaiting nothing more than to be set in motion. To be given free rein. The old man then spoke of the importance of sensory details. "Use all your senses," he advised. "Describe not just what can be seen, but also what can be heard, smelled, touched, and tasted. When your audience, your listeners, can experience the stories with all their senses, they will then become real to them. They will, in essence, come to life." He thus illustrated his point with a story about a young woman named Anara who lived in a bustling marketplace. Anara's world was filled with the clamor of street and market vendors, and the rich aroma of exotic spices, the rough texture of woven baskets, and the vibrant colors of many different fabrics. By describing her world in such detail, you can almost hear the calls of the merchants, smell and fragrances the marketplace in the air, and see the vivid hues of all manner of clothes and fabrics. The old man also emphasized the power of emotions in storytelling. "Stories are not just about events," he said, "but about the emotions they evoke. Make your audience feel what your characters feel. Joy, sorrow, fear, and love are universal experiences. When you tap into these emotions, your story rings and pulsates on an inner and much deeper level. To a storyteller, stories are like ether to a doctor wishing to separate his patient from any discomfort or unpleasant inconveniences. Because good and well-told stories can take us all out of ourselves by removing us from the here and now. Because good and well-told stories gently slide us into another realm." He then shared a tale of a young soldier named Marcus, who returned home from war. Marcus had traveled a long and hard road and now stood at the threshold of his home, his heart pounding with a mix of relief and trepidation. The familiar scent of his mother's cooking wafted through the air, bringing tears to his eyes and a happiness his heart had not felt for a long time. By connecting with Marcus's emotions, you feel his relief, his anticipation, and his deep longing for the comfort of home and family. In essence, the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of the familiar. The young villagers listened intently, their minds absorbing the wisdom the old man imparted. He spoke of something called character development, and the importance of making characters relatable and multidimensional. "A story's heart lies in its characters," he explained. "When your audience cares about your characters, they care about your story." He then told them about Lena, a determined young woman who faced numerous obstacles in her life. Lena was not just a character, but a person with hopes, dreams, fears, and also with human frailties and flaws. By making her journey through life relatable and her personality complex, you invite your audience to walk beside her and share in her trials and tribulations, the very substance of her experiences. The old man concluded by reminding the villagers of the ultimate goal of storytelling. At its core, he said, storytelling is about connection. It's about sharing a piece of yourself and inviting others into your world. The very world of your story. When you tell a story, you bridge the gap between hearts and minds, creating a shared experience that transcends time and space. We, all of us, through the magic of stories, have the power to change and alter the concepts of things, and of people and places. And storytellers understand, only too well, the concept of place, in the mind's eye, of the listeners. The old caretaker paused, letting the echoes of his words fade into the serene silence of the cemetery. He looked around at the young faces, seeing the flicker of understanding in their eyes. The old man's storytelling wisdom is timeless, he said softly. The techniques he shared are the same ones that have been used by the great storytellers throughout history. Conjure up, in your mind's eye, if you will, some of the ghosts from bygone ages. For instance, become familiar with the stories of, say, the 7 Voyages of Sinbad the Sailor, which is a later addition to the list of stories contained within the 1001 Nights, and which also contain the recounts of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, and Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp. And what of Sherazade, the wife of a despotic ruler, who prolonged her life by telling stories, so that she may live yet another day, and also read the tales of just a small few, better-known authors, some, plucked here at random and who readily come to mind, such as Homer with his epic poems, and Aesop with his fables, and Aristotle's insights offered to us in his works, On the Soul, and On Sleep and Wakefulness. These are ventures into dimensionless inner territories of the mind, offered to the world nearly 2,000 years before we were born. And take Cicero, who gave us his treatises on the arts of rhetoric, philosophy, and politics, and who inspired the founding fathers of the United States of America. Should I mention Virgil, the Roman poet of the Augustan period, who inspired Dante's Divine Comedy, where Virgil himself appears and guides Dante through hell and purgatory, or Geoffrey Chaucer with his Canterbury Tales and his Troilus and Cressida, and the House of Fame, and the Book of the Duchess, and the Legend of Good Women. Oh, who now could not allow William Shakespeare a mention? Mr. Shakespeare gave us enthrallment after enthrallment, himself being best known as a playwright. But he is regarded as so much more than this. And his assumed body of work, including affiliations, lists out to some 39 plays, with his sonnets numbering around 154. He is also attributed with 3 long narrative poems, and a few other items of note. His work has been translated into every major living language in the world, and is performed, in one way or another, more often than those of any other author, either living or dead. How could we not envy such a prodigious outpouring? Moving on now, we come across Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra, who introduces us to La Galatea, and, later on, the unforgettable and troubled Don Quixote, accompanied, of course, by his faithful sidekick, squire, and dear companion, Sancho Panza. A little closer to home we find Mr. Charles John Huffam Dickens, the English short story writer, journalist, social critic and, eventually, a great novelist. Mr. Dickens entreated us to the likes of The Pickwick Papers, David Copperfield, Oliver Twist, A Christmas Carol, Great Expectations, and, of course, A Tale of Two Cities, just to name a few or these outstanding, educational exactitudes. Across the Atlantic we come across Mr. Mark Twain. Not his real name, but we certainly don't hold that against him, as he gave us outstandingly immortal works in the embodiment of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and A Connecticut Yankee in the Court of King Arthur. Mr. Twain was noted for his razor-sharp and insightful wit, and hated graft and corruption in all its forms in the public life of America. Now, Mr. Jules Verne, who collaborated with Pierre-Jules Hetzel, leading to the devising of the Voyages Extraordinaire, which was a series of adventure novels. These included Journey to the Center of the Earth, 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas, and Around the World in 80 Days. All much-loved favorites as well as other deliverances far too numerous to mention here. And, bringing this heady list to an unfinished close, we mention the short story writer Mr. Gabriel José de la Concordia García Márquez, who presents us with a literary style which became known as magical realism. Now, magical realism is, as it sounds, a style of writing that uses magical elements within the everyday reality of ordinary situations. For our purposes here, it is poignant to mention novels such as Chronicle of a Death Foretold, 100 Years of Solitude, and Love in the Time of Cholera. All of which allow us to see, clearly, into the working mind of a master storyteller of great renown. They, and many, many other writers and storytellers, all knew how to seed the mind with vivid images, how to evoke emotions, and how to create connections that transcend written and spoken words. With this, the caretaker leaned forward, his voice growing more intimate, and, fixing his listeners with a wide sweeping, all-embracing stare, entreated them with this. As you embark on your journey as storytellers, remember that you have this power within you. Use descriptive language to paint pictures, employ sensory details to make those pictures vivid, and tap into emotions to make your stories resonate. Develop your characters so they live and breathe in the minds of your audience, and always strive to connect, heart to heart, through your words. The listeners sat in rapt silence, absorbing the caretaker's words, much like the villagers had absorbed the old man's. The caretaker was well pleased, as all those around him certainly looked inspired, one and all, their minds brimming with the thoughts given to them, and are now possessed with a fuller feeling and understanding of the craft of storytelling. The caretaker smiled his old, enigmatic smile. His heart warmed by the sight of their eager faces. Now, he said, remember all you have listened to here today, and tell your stories as though they were the only thing that mattered between you and your listeners. And plant your new seeds in the fertile gardens of hearing, and listening, and watching minds. And see those seeds grow, and this will clearly be seen in the faces of your listeners, and those flowering thoughts will cascade into vivid, living worlds of wonderment. As the evening light faded, the audience of would-be storytellers left the cemetery with a renewed sense of purpose. They carried with them the thoughts and lessons of the old man and the wisdom of the caretaker, all eager and ready to embark upon their own journeys as storytellers, and to paint vivid pictures in the minds of their own audiences, and to create connections within places that would, by the very power of words, transcend time and space. And so, it ever was. And I thank you for listening to A Tired Old Man, and, if nothing else, you have been given the magic of food for thought. Enjoy the taste of it, because it has the power to replenish the life-giving energies, hopes and dreams of the very soul within us all. Thank you for your time and interest. And stay safe now. Remember, you're not alone. Even when you're on your own, you're never, ever, on your own.